There is an organization operating inside Russia right now that has more power than any army, any court, any politician, and most people outside its walls will never truly understand what it does or how deep its reach goes. It is not the military. It is not the Kremlin, at least not officially. It is the Federal Security Service, the FSB, and it is the direct successor to one of the most feared institutions in human history, the KGB. If you think the Cold War ended and that kind of power disappeared, you are wrong. It evolved. It got quieter, smarter, and in many ways far more dangerous. Today we are going inside that world rank by rank to show you what life actually looks like when you are part of it, from the very first day you walk into the academy as a wide-eyed cadet to the moment you sit behind a desk and realize you have the power to make people disappear. It starts before you even apply. The FSB does not recruit the way a normal employer does. There are no job boards, no open applications sitting on a government website waiting for anyone to click. The FSB finds you, or rather, it finds the version of you that fits a very specific mold: top academic performance, clean family history going back generations, psychological stability that borders on emotional coldness, and above all, loyalty. Not loyalty to Russia in the abstract sense, but loyalty to the state, to the institution, to the idea that the security of the country justifies almost anything. If you grew up in a military family, if your father or uncle served in Soviet terror intelligence, your chances go up significantly. Connections matter enormously in this world. They always have. When you are accepted into the FSB Academy in Moscow, you enter a completely different reality. The academy is formally known as the Institute of the Federal Security Service, and from the outside it looks like a university. Inside, it operates like something between a military base and a psychological laboratory. Your days are structured down to the minute. Physical training happens before most people are awake. You study law, cryptography, foreign languages, surveillance techniques, interrogation psychology, and counterintelligence theory simultaneously. The academic pressure is extreme, but it is not the hardest part. The hardest part is the psychological evaluation that runs continuously throughout your time there. You are being watched. Always. Your instructors are not just teaching you, they are assessing whether you crack under pressure, whether you talk too much, whether your loyalties waver when they are tested in controlled scenarios designed to look like accidents. Some cadets wash out not because they failed an exam, but because they showed the wrong kind of emotion at the wrong moment. Surviving the academy and graduating as a junior officer is a genuine achievement, but it comes with an immediate reality check. Your first posting is almost certainly not glamorous. You are likely assigned to surveillance work, what insiders call the tail. You follow people. You sit in cars for hours in the Moscow cold watching an apartment window. You learn to blend into a crowd so completely that you become invisible. The targets you follow might be foreign diplomats, suspected dissidents, journalists, businessmen with the wrong connections, or sometimes ordinary citizens who said something online that triggered an algorithm. You do not always know why you are watching someone. You are not supposed to ask. Your job at this level is execution, not analysis, and the single most important skill you develop is patience, the ability to wait, to observe, and to report without inserting your own judgment into the chain. There is a psychological weight to this work that nobody prepares you for. You are watching human beings live their lives, going to the grocery store, picking up their children from school, calling their mothers on the phone, and you are recording it all, filing it, handing it up the chain to people who will decide what to do with it. Some of the people you watch will be arrested, some will lose their jobs, some will simply be warned in ways that are never traced back to an official action. A few will disappear from public life entirely. You learn early on not to think too hard about what happens after your report leaves your hands. That is not your rank's concern. As you move into the role of a full operational officer, the nature of your work shifts dramatically. You are no longer just observing, you are recruiting. Running informants is the core skill of mid-level FSB work, and it is as much an art as it is a science. You identify targets, people with access to information, people with vulnerabilities, people who can be turned into sources inside organizations, companies, foreign embassies, or social movements. Then you cultivate them. This might take months. You build a relationship, you find the pressure point: financial trouble, secret, an ambition that the FSB can quietly help fulfill, and then you apply it. Some people are recruited through genuine ideology, through a belief that they are serving their country. Most are recruited through fear or incentive. The FSB is not particularly ideological at the operational level. It is pragmatic. By the time you reach senior officer, you are leading operations rather than executing them. You have a small team under you, a specific portfolio of targets, or a specific geographic or thematic area you are responsible for. The political dimension of the work becomes impossible to ignore at this level. The FSB does not operate in a vacuum. It operates inside a Russian state where institutional power is constantly being negotiated, where rival agencies compete for influence, where a well-placed report can destroy a career and a suppressed report can protect one. You learn that the information you collect is not neutral. It is a weapon, and the question of who it is used against and who it is used to protect is decided far above your head. You learn to be careful about what you know, and even more careful about what you put in writing. Reaching department head is where many FSB careers peak, and it is also where the paranoia becomes structural rather than personal. You are now managing a team of officers, overseeing multiple active operations, and reporting directly up into a chain that reaches the senior leadership of the service. The bureaucratic pressure is immense. You are responsible for results, but the definition of results shifts depending on what the leadership needs at any given moment. Sometimes the priority is foreign intelligence. Sometimes it is domestic dissent. Sometimes it is economic crime, which in Russia often means powerful people using the FSB to eliminate business rivals under the legal cover of corruption investigations. You become fluent in reading the political weather. You understand that in the FSB, being right is sometimes less important than being useful to the right person at the right time. And through all of it, from your first frozen night sitting in a surveillance car to the day you sign off on an operation that will alter someone's life forever, you carry with you the weight of what this institution is. The FSB is not just a security service. It is the living memory of Soviet power, adapted for the modern world. Its culture was shaped by men who believed that the security of the state was the highest possible value, that individuals were instruments of history, and that information was the ultimate form of control. Those beliefs did not die with the Soviet Union. They were inherited, and every rank you climb brings you closer to the center of that inheritance, until the day you stop being someone who serves the machine and start being someone who is the machine. There is a moment in every FSB career where the work stops feeling like a job and starts feeling like an identity, where the boundaries between the institution and the person dissolve so completely that you cannot remember who you were before you walked through those doors. That moment arrives at different times for different people, but by the time you reach the level of deputy director of a directorate, it has happened to everyone who has made it this far. You are no longer an officer who serves the FSB. You are the FSB in every meaningful sense of the word, and the power that comes with that reality is unlike anything available to ordinary human beings operating inside a normal state. At deputy director level, you are operating inside one of the FSB's major directorates, the counterintelligence service, the service for the protection of the constitutional order, the economic security service, or one of the other large structural divisions that make up the organization. Each directorate is essentially a powerful intelligence agency unto itself, with its own operational capacity, its own networks, its own budget, lines that do not always appear in official documents, and its own culture. Your role is to translate the strategic priorities of the director above you into operational reality across an enormous portfolio of ongoing work. You are managing not just operations but people's senior officers with their own ambitions, their own loyalties, their own carefully cultivated relationships with powerful figures outside the FSB. Managing them requires a kind of political intelligence that is entirely separate from the tradecraft skills that got you here. You are not running surveillance anymore. You are running humans, and humans at this level are far more dangerous and unpredictable than any foreign target. The black operations begin in earnest here. Not every action the FSB takes is recorded in a file that will ever be read by an auditor or a court. At deputy director level, you become aware of the full architecture of what the service actually does versus what it officially acknowledges doing. The operations that exist in a parallel institutional reality, authorized through verbal channels, carried out by units whose names do not appear in organizational charts, and attributed to nobody when they produce results. These are not aberrations. They are a core part of how the FSB functions, and understanding them, being trusted with knowledge of them, is itself a form of initiation into the innermost circle of Russian state power. The targets of these operations are not always foreign enemies. Sometimes they are Russian citizens. Sometimes they are Russian oligarchs who have stepped out of line. Sometimes they are politicians, journalists, activists, people the state has decided are problems that require solutions that the law cannot provide. By the time you are director of a directorate, you have arrived at a place where your personal decisions shape the reality of millions of people without any of them ever knowing your name. You control the counterintelligence apparatus, an entire domain of Russian national life, or the economic security apparatus, or the domestic surveillance infrastructure, and the authority you wield in that domain is nearly absolute within its boundaries. Foreign intelligence services study you. They know your name, your career history, your known associates, your travel patterns. You are a target as much as you are an operator, and your personal security arrangements reflect that. You do not move through the world the way ordinary people do. Every environment you enter has been assessed in advance. The people around you have been vetted multiple times. Your communications are conducted through channels that would be unrecognizable to anyone outside the Russian security establishment. The relationship between the FSB and the Russian political system becomes completely transparent at this level in a way it never quite was before. You understand now that the Kremlin does not simply direct the FSB. The relationship is more complex, more symbiotic, and in certain ways more dangerous for both sides. The FSB provides the Kremlin with the intelligence, the leverage, and the operational capacity it needs to maintain control over Russian society and project power internationally. In return, the Kremlin provides the FSB with resources, legal protection, and political authority that makes it untouchable by any other institution in the country. But the relationship also means that the FSB is always in service of a political agenda, and political agendas shift. Directors of directorates have been destroyed by Kremlin politics just as surely as they have been elevated by them. The higher you climb, the more clearly you see that the safety you accumulated on the way up was always partially illusory. The first deputy director position is where the air gets genuinely thin. There is one person above you, the director of the FSB, and that person serves at the pleasure of the President of the Russian Federation. You are visible enough at this level to be considered a potential successor, and that visibility is simultaneously the greatest asset and the greatest danger of your career. Russian institutional history is full of men who reached this proximity to the top and never made the final step, not because they were incompetent, but because they were perceived as too ambitious, too independent, too popular within the service, or simply because someone else was better positioned at the critical moment. You have watched colleagues at this level be reassigned to meaningless advisory roles, sent to ambassadorial postings that are essentially gilded exile, or in the worst cases, become the subject of the kind of investigation that the FSB itself specializes in conducting. You know exactly how those investigations work. You helped design some of them. And then there is the director. The director of the FSB holds one of the most consequential positions in the world, and it is a position defined above all else by proximity to Vladimir Putin or whoever sits in that office at any given moment in Russian history. Every FSB director in the modern era has been a man who came up through the security services, who understood the culture from the inside, and who was trusted not because of his institutional competence alone, but because of his personal relationship with the most powerful individual in Russia. The director controls the domestic security of a nuclear-armed state. He controls the counterintelligence operations that protect Russian state secrets and penetrate foreign intelligence services simultaneously. He controls the economic security apparatus that determines which oligarchs sleep soundly and which ones receive a visit from investigators. He controls the units responsible for operations that officially do not exist. The weight of that control does not manifest the way you might imagine it from the outside. It does not feel like power in the cinematic sense. It does not feel like standing on top of a mountain surveying everything below. It feels like standing at the center of an enormous, constantly moving machine that you are responsible for keeping operational, that will crush you if you lose your footing, and that serves a master whose priorities you must anticipate before he articulates them. The director of the FSB is powerful beyond almost any civilian measure, and he is also, in the most fundamental sense, not free. He is the instrument of the Russian state just as the lowest cadet is. The instrument has simply become vastly more sophisticated and vastly more dangerous. What the FSB ultimately represents, viewed from every rank simultaneously, is a vision of human organization in which security justifies everything, in which the state is the highest possible value, and in which the individuals who serve it trade their autonomy, their privacy, their moral complexity, and in some cases their humanity for a form of power that is real, enormous, completely dependent on the continued existence of the system that granted it. From the cadet sitting in a freezing car watching a window, to the director signing off on operations that will never be acknowledged, every person inside this institution has made the same fundamental bargain, the question that none of them can ever fully answer, and the question that makes the FSB one of the most fascinating and terrifying institutions on Earth, is whether that bargain was ever truly worth it.